Hello and welcome to the Voices of Impact. I am Alfonzo Alexander, your host for this amazing show that you're going to be able to experience with us today as we have a friend of mine who's our guest today, Dr. Darryl Rice. And we'll let Dr. Rice tell you a little bit more about him. Dr. Rice, how are you today?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. Just trying to keep things moving in a positive direction, you know?
Hey, that's important given the current times that we're in. So definitely appreciate the invitation to talk to you.
Yeah, glad that you could do it. I know your schedule is busy, so looking forward to engaging with you. Let's start with your work and your career as it stands today. I know you are an amazing professor in the area of management, and you have some specialty areas that you focus on within that. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis, and then we'll get into how you got from early ages in life to where you are today.
Yeah, no problem. So to everyone out there, as Alfonso said, my name is Dr. Darryl B. Rice. I'm an associate professor of management as well as the Richard T. Farmer Associate Professor at Miami University. I've been at Miami University for more than 10 years now, so entering year 10 at Miami University. Quick note, that is Miami University of Ohio. The University of Florida is in Florida. So, fun fact, Miami University was founded in 1809 when Florida was still a Spanish territory. So we are the original Miami.
I love it. I love it. I did not know that history
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Gotta drop the as an educator, it's always the right time to educate folks.
Right, exactly. So you are in an endowed chair position. I heard you mention as
Yes.
well. So talk to us about that. That's a significant honor. How did you get in an endowment there?
Yeah, so this was just the trajectory, if you will, that the my career was on. So a quick background, I did my undergrad at Florida State University. I had a
Oh no.
bachelor's, Go Knowles. So I had a double major in finance and multinational business operations. Then I pursued my MBA at Jacksonville University, and
Okay.
then pursued my PhD in business administration at the University of Central Florida.
Right.
And then upon graduating from the University of Central Florida, um, obviously got hired at Miami University. So this has been the first and only job I've had since I've graduated from the University of Central Florida. And in terms of being one of the inaugural holders of the Richard T. Farmer Associate Professor, that was a significant accomplishment. That was a professional goal that I had always set was to be, a named or endowed professor. And Miami, particularly the Farmer Business School, Farmer School of Business, rewarded me due to, just my research productivity. I
Sure.
was, shortly after I tenured, uh, the research productivity stayed, particularly in the areas of behavioral ethics, organizational justice, and workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have a lot to say on those topics based upon, professional background as well as the questions I like to ask and answer in various conversations I like to join that's happening in the literature, as well as conversations I think that should be started in the literature, and obviously being able to publish the research in the journals that Miami values were the was kind of the key reason I was awarded um, uh, the Richard T. Farmer Associate Professorship.
Share with us why and when you decided that you wanted to become a PhD.
So my background, again, I graduated from Florida State, degrees in finance and multinational business operations. So after graduating, I worked for Merrill Lynch. I was hired at Merrill Lynch. By the time I went to go pursue my PhD, it was Bank of America in Merrill Lynch. So I went through that merger as a 25-year-old, and working in the investment banking world shaped the had an impact in terms of why I wanted to pursue a PhD, basically leave corporate America and pursue a PhD. Very interesting. During my time at Merrill Lynch, um, they had an MBA program agreement with Jacksonville University. Hey, if you enroll in an MBA program, if you get an A, we pay for 100% of the tuition course. If you get a B, it's 90%. So I pursued my MBA, and at Jacksonville University, that's where I met Dr. Matricia James, another
Yeah.
PhD project faculty. So she pulled me aside one class. I'm thinking I said something, what did I do now? I'm getting in trouble already. And she was like, you should consider, pursuing a PhD after you finish your MBA. And I was like, nah, I'm just trying to get this MBA so I can get some more money. But then the more I had thought about it and going through that merger and acquisition, where I personally felt, our executive leadership team made some bad decisions, and which, resulted in us having to go through this merger and acquisition to be saved. But they got these crazy severance packages, and a lot of other people who had nothing to do with the decisions that were being made lost their jobs, and that just felt unfair and
Mhm.
unjust to me. And this is when I started gravitating more toward my management and leadership courses as opposed to the corporate finance classes that I was taking.
Right.
So that kind of shifted my interest from finance to management and leadership, and understanding the role of you have to do right by your people even in challenging times. So
Sure.
wanting to kind of shift a career because I felt, okay, this company no longer reflects the values that I thought we had, this shared alignment. So after just, pivot, so I'll talk to Matricia James, Dr. Matricia James more, and she's, been a mentor to me throughout my entire career. So being in corporate America, going through that merger and acquisition, seeing how generally the low people on the totem pole are the ones who are basically screwed over when bad decisions are happening at the C-suite, that just galvanized and solidified my interest in, doing the right thing. And that's reflected in my three interests of behavioral ethics, workplace justice, and organizational diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the rest was history. Went to the University of Central Florida. My academic pops, Dr. Rob Folger, the greatest professor, academic to this day, kind of the gold standard of what, a professor should look like and, seek to accomplish in his career. And the University of Central Florida, just a fantastic doctoral program. When I was there, really prepared us to be independent scholars, independent thinkers,
Mhm.
focused on training us. So when we got out here, it was like, y'all not going to have us looking crazy. You're going to come out well trained, and people will like know that you're for real. So
Sure.
yeah, that's kind of how I started and ended
Okay.
up here where I'm at today.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So you mentioned Dr. James, who I think is phenomenal, being a mentor. You mentioned your other mentor, the GOAT, if you will.
Mhm.
And I know that you mentor also younger PhD students and entry-level PhD faculty members. Why is mentoring so important and such a part of the fabric of who you are?
Very simple. You have to pay it forward. Without a doubt, without the mentorship of Dr. James, Dr. Folger, as well as some of my other mentors in the PhD project, Dr. Cornetta Roberson, Dr. Herman McGinnis, Dr. N. Williamson, Miles Davis, D.T. Ogilvy. The list goes on and on. I like a lot of individuals have poured into me, so I feel obligated that I have to pour into others. So I love participating in the PhD project, MFCA, MDSA, mentoring program, because that is how you can make a difference. It made a difference in my career. I 100% believe it can make a difference in other people's career because you think you're just kind of operating and living out, this career, but you have unique insights in terms of, hey, this is how I've overcome this particular barrier, or this is how I've navigated this situation. So just wanting to help others, be a voice for those who may not necessarily have the certain privileges and statuses that I have as an endowed professor, a 10-year professor, and just showing them the ropes because I truly believe when you are at an institution where there is this person organization fit, you can thrive in this career as opposed to if you make a wrong choice, then like this career can be very draining. So I think part of why I like to mentor junior faculty and doctoral students is, hey, focus on fit, focus on value alignment because the work will always be there. The teaching, the research, the service, that will always be there, but you want to really feel like I'm contributing to the institution. I'm contributing to my students and the impact that I can have on their personal and professional development. So to me, is I mentor out of a form of duty, obligation, and love.
Wonderful, man. That's awesome. When people embrace that paying it forward, the impact is exponential. So when I think about, excuse me, when I think about you, I know you're impacting students of yours that you teach every day. You're impacting the community through your research, and that you're also impacting others that are following in your footsteps as it relates to your mentoring. So kudos to you, man. I really appreciate that. So you have three very distinct research interest areas. Let's talk about behavioral ethics. I understand that merger and acquisition kind of helps stimulate the thought there. So, what do you do in that space? And do you consult or anything in that space as well?
Yeah, publish and consult in that area. So there are definitely three distinct areas. There's some overlap amongst them as well. But the ethics was my original interest. And then organizational justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of born out of ethics, which is doing the right thing, and then the justice is the context matter. Then the diversity, equity, and inclusion was the people matter as well. But the draw to ethics was it's always the time is always right to do the right thing. So,
Mm,
having in the workplace and in organizations this professional sense of integrity, right? And your professional code of integrity is challenged in moments of conflict, in moments of where it may be easier to cut a corner or it
mm,
may be easier to just comply and not necessarily be morally courageous. So, in the behavioral ethics literature, one of the concepts that really speaks to me is moral courage. You kind of have these inner principles to do the right thing no matter what, especially during very challenging and turbulent times. So that was directly, as you kind of noted, Alfonso. Yeah, that was tied to me going through the merger and acquisition where I felt, all right, we're just not doing the right thing by our people. And
mm.
the people in power, those endowed with legitimate power in the workplace, have just kind of focused on self-interest.
Yeah.
Yes, I screwed this up, but now I have this crazy severance package where I can kind of ride off to the sunset, and I just never made sense to me. You can get to a level where if you screw up, you can be rewarded financially. I mean, I understand it's just kind of like the industry norm, if you will, but it just sent the wrong message to me as a recent college grad coming out very idealistic. So it was no like you have to do the right thing. Like why is it some organizations were like our C-suite will take salary pay cuts to reduce how many people we have to lay off, where others was like, we're going to lay off as many people as possible so we can kind of continue and whatnot. So having that dichotomy and wanting to figure out what motivates people to want to do the right thing by others as opposed to kind of focusing on self-preservation.
Yeah, sure, sure. That's outstanding, and it's very interesting to me that these very distinct research areas that you operate in and do work in are distinct, but then the overlap, as you mentioned, I think previously in my career, I served for a long time as a chief ethics and diversity officer at an organization that was international, really in scope. And what I found throughout my career on the diversity side of things is that when there wasn't really inclusion in an organization, oftentimes that was an ethical issue. And so we started developing materials and did talks on how ethics negatively or positively impacts diversity.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting that you mentioned the overlap there. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, so kind of what you see, what you've noticed in practice is also what we notice in research that
Okay.
the issues of organizational workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion are oftentimes interrelated with ethical issues. So in my paper that's published in the Journal of Business Ethics, we kind of talked about, the ethical implications of what it means to have ethical leaders for Black employees in the workplace. And that is just tied to, we can trace it back to the civil rights movement, where you had ethical leaders across different races kind of cultivating this environment where we want everyone to feel included. And when ethical leaders cultivate the environments where everyone feel included, that disproportionately matters the most to those who have historically or currently, been not included. So we kind of found that ethical leadership, um, empirically, ethical leadership improves a company's diversity climate, which also helps Black employees become more engaged, and they also report less experiences of workplace ostracism. And then there's another paper where we show where when organizations institutionalize ethics, once you institutionalize ethics, your frontline supervisors are more likely to lead in an inclusive manner for everyone compared
Mhm.
to organizations that did not institutionalize ethics. So oftentimes ethics is the triggering point to make the organization more welcoming for everyone. And then the performance implications are also real. So you have higher levels of engagement, higher levels of performance, decreased levels of turnover and tension. So when you make the ethical case, you
Yeah,
also make the business case for
sure.
DEI stronger as well.
Yeah, yeah. It almost seems like if you raise the level of ethics in an organization, then all other positive things raise too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, ethics is like your franchise quarterback. If you get
yeah.
your franchise, if you get your ethical structure and culture right in the organization, a
Right.
byproduct of that will just kind of elevate other things you want to do.
Sure. No, that's outstanding. and then the justice piece. So tell us about, some of the specific things that you do in the justice area.
Yeah, so for the workplace uh, justice, this is directly tied to my doctoral years at the University of Central Florida. So that is what UCF is known for in the field of management, behavioral ethics, and organizational justice. And my dissertation advisor, Rob Folger, is considered one of the five godfathers of the organizational justice
Okay.
field. So just understanding in terms of the workplace justice, you have kind of like the different facets, right? So procedural justice, distributive justice, as well as interpersonal or interactional, and then overall justice. So justice kind of resonated with me because when you start looking at justice, that naturally, for me, that made me focus more or understanding the various kind of occasions that workplace injustices happen. And from
Hmm.
that standpoint, my research focuses on various workplace injustices committed by one supervisor. So most of my research in that area focuses on what we call the dark side aspect of workplace justice. So abuse of supervision, like you've been exposed to this sustained mistreatment from your supervisor is one of the most salient examples of workplace injustice.
Hmm.
And what does that do to your employees, right? So one of the things it does is workplace injustices such as abusive supervision, that's a source of stress. So you are depleting your your employees, your subordinates, resources to actually do the job. So, abusive supervision adversely impacts our ability to perform. And it also, it probably is very straightforward. It also wants, increased turnover in teachers, right? Again, if my boss, whom generally represents the organization in my eyes as an employee, is abusing me, treating me unfairly, it's only a matter of time before I hit the deuces and peace out because
Right.
I'm going to want to go work for an organization that employs supervisors that focuses on treating all of their employees fairly, treating their employees equitably. So looking at the consequences as well as the predictors of antecedents because the consequences are kind of well known, but asking the questions, well, psychologically, what's going on to actually make a manager engage in abusive supervision?
Yeah.
And it could be a trickle down effect. I'm being abused by my subordinate, so by my superior, so I'm just going to take out this frustration on my, subordinate. So this idea of displaced aggression, or again, going back to ethics, if you have unethical norms in the workplace,
Yeah.
um, your employees are more likely to report experiences with abusive supervisors.
Sure. Sure. It's amazing to me how what you just described really can be a culture, and
Mhm.
a culture of mistreatment, a culture of injustice can just permeate through the whole organization, and it really can start or stop at the top
Yep.
with the right leader, the right ethical leader, if you will. So, just as I continue to think about research, so from what I understand, I'm not a researcher, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what I understand, the best research starts with a question that the researcher wants to answer. And so, if that's correct, tell me what questions you have right now that you're thinking and pondering and maybe getting ready to explore.
Yeah, so I totally believe that. There's a saying the best research is me search, and there's something that's in you that is not being addressed, and through your training, your expertise, your lived experiences, you raise a question and then you also make the case in terms of this is why we need to address this question. If we
Right.
address these questions, look at these implications of it. So for me now, particularly in the ethics, justice, and diversity, equity, and inclusion space, uh, I'm next semester, I'm about to launch a new, I won't say research areas, it dovetail into this, but I definitely want to ask more questions centered on courageous leadership versus cowardly leadership, because I
Oh,
definitely think there's some predictors that we need to know what are the factors in the organization that makes supervisors become courageous leaders as opposed to cowardly leaders. So not only understanding what are the situational, institutional, organizational, or even individual level predictors that can better help us understand what makes institutional leaders act courageously versus cowardly, is one, and then looking at the outcomes of courageous leadership as well as cowardly leadership. Because I think many people in the current time are engaging more so in the cowardly leadership. Like you're being very fearful, you are trying to avoid conflict, getting the target off your back. But to your employees, your subordinates, or your followers, that sends a message that you lack a backbone. Like there's no spine. So when it's time when the rubber is about to meet the road, I can't count on you. Like you're going to turn, run, hide, focus on self-preservation. You're going to signal, I cower when I am fearful. And then that's it hasn't been demonstrated yet, but I think that's going to have an impact on employee morale, team performance, as well as turnover intentions, because I don't think individuals who are working for an organization want to feel like I am working for a cowardly leader. On the flip side, when I feel my supervisor is engaging in courageous leadership, like there's significant, like their job is on the line,
yeah,
but they feel like, no, this is a matter of integrity. I
yeah,
can't capitulate to what I feel, is unethical or wrong, external pressures. I think that galvanizes your employees and that boosts engagement. It will boost commitment to the organization. More specifically, it'll boost commitment toward that leader. So, which we know also have performance implications, and it reduces turnover. So I do think being able to show some of the non-financial as well as the financial implications of cowardly leadership compared to courageous leadership, that is what in 2026, got to see some of my current projects through, but that is the next um, kind of set of projects that I want to tackle, because I think it's a very timely and relevant issue, not just in, academy or higher education, but I also think you're seeing a lot of this in, the private sector, nonprofits, as
politics.
in politics, and a
Yeah.
lot of people just want a better understanding of the drivers and outcomes associated with courageous leadership as well as cowardly leadership.
That's very fascinating because there are a few questions that come to my mind. One is if you're cowardly approaching things, are you really being a leader? So then that
Mhm.
gets into the question about positional leadership versus true leadership, right?
Yep.
And then the other piece that strikes me there is I'm curious if your research will vet out, can a person be a courageous leader in one environment and a cowardly leader in another environment? I tend to think you are who you are, and if you're courageous, you bring that everywhere you go. If you're cowardly, you bring it everywhere you go. But I don't know.
Yeah, so yeah, those are great research questions. And I think to your point, when you start focusing on the individual level kind of predictors of courageous leadership. Obviously, if you're morally courageous, how we measure that, that can be like this individual difference. Like this is a proclivity that you have, this is a tendency that you have. So you are naturally wired to be, morally courageous. Like if you're going to, you know, ask critical questions and demand answers and say, no, I'm not going to do this. Like that's generally like who you are as a person. Now, there
Hmm.
can be some factors where maybe you do want to be a courageous leader. And if it's not driven by your sense of moral courage or your level of conscientiousness, then maybe it's a combination of the environment and personality um, traits.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like you and I should some co-author some pieces.
Hey man, I'm all for it. So last question that I have for you, Dr. Rice, is if you were talking to a young Darryl Rice who is considering going into a PhD program, and you would say, here's some advice I would give you to have a successful career as a researcher, as an academic, what would that advice be?
Be true to yourself. There are certain projects, papers that are only in you to write. So if you don't produce it, you don't get it out there, it won't be done. So
Mm,
be true to yourself, be true to how you was raised. Don't waffle. Uh, Professional integrity matters, and it is okay to ask critical questions and focus on fit or you want to be at a place that fits with you personally as well as professionally. That would be
mm.
the advice. And
Okay. Okay. Fit. So important. So important. Well, Dr. Rice, it's been amazing talking with you today, man. I really appreciate you taking time to come and join us on the Voices of Impact podcast here brought to you by the PhD Project. And you absolutely are a voice of impact. You have been all of the time that I've known you, your favorite advisor for me when it comes to some of the things that we're dealing with as we try to navigate through our work at the PhD project. So I really appreciate you and continue to be that strong voice that you always have been. Thanks for being here with us.
appreciate the time to talk to you as always, bro.
All right. Thank you, brother.
All right.
Tune in, get inspired, and discover the voices making a difference through the Voices of Impact podcast, your front row seat to the future of leadership.